Now, on yesterday morning's programme, we mentioned this report in most of the papers yesterday. Excuse me. It was actually a story relating to excessive homework being a pointless exercise and that it is eroding family life. Sorry about that frog in the old throat there, but I think I've got it sorted out now. And I'm joined on the line this morning by Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly, who was making a point yesterday that the Irish education system is actually stuck in a vortex and that homework is actually creating bad habits for life in our nation's children. And when we actually mentioned this article, we were getting an awful lot of calls from parents yesterday who were in wholehearted agreement with what Dr. Naoisé O'Reilly was saying that in many instances, children in national schools are coming home with maybe an hour and a half or 2 hours of homework, having already spent 5 hours in school, and the same applying to secondary schools where a lot of children were spending up to 4 hours a night doing their homework, and that this was infringing on the other aspects of family life, like, for example, the ability to simply communicate and to talk about things outside that of education. Well, Dr. Naoisé joins me on the line now. Naoisé, good morning to you and thanks for being with us.
Good morning, thanks for having me. How are you?
Very well, thanks. I suppose in many ways, were you testing the waters here in relation to sort of what kind of public reaction you would get to what it was you were saying? Because, I mean, you were putting your head above the parapet, so to speak, in many ways, weren't you?
Yes, but I tend to do that. So I went out on my own almost 3 years ago to form my own tuition centre in order to develop a different learning method. So I'm quite used to doing this, and as a dyslexic myself, I've kind of battled through the school system and done everything that people didn't expect it. So it's not unlike me to stick my head out and say something sort of slightly that doesn't fit.
So you were saying in yesterday's papers that perhaps parents should start asking how doing homework helps you to get on in life.
Yes, well, this came out of a workshop that I did last Friday for Aspire, and it was a workshop to support parents who were trying to support their children at home who have learning difficulties. And I sort of asked, it was a very interactive workshop, and I asked during the workshop, why do we do homework? What's the point of it? And the answers I got were a little scary. They sort of felt that it was just something that you have to do, or it just automatically makes you get on in life.
So we're kind of stereotyped into believing, or brainwashed, if that's the right word to use, by thinking that simply by learning off, in many cases, learning off by heart information, that we believe that this is the best way to form a proper education base, but you would say not so.
No, we don't ever set any homework out of the homework club. I really believe that if you learn effectively for an hour with us and that you have really participated in the classes and that you've really learned in the style that suits you, because basically we teach in 4 different ways. We teach in a visual, auditory, practical and kinesthetic way, and that's sort of aimed at suiting everybody. And if you have done that very effectively for an hour and you've taken the information in, you really shouldn't have to go away and cram it into your head. Like, we always remember what we enjoy and what we do and what we've actually experienced and been part of. And there doesn't seem to be a sort of a cohesive strategy in setting homework to actually do that. And especially, it's bad enough when you look at very young students of 6 and 7 who are working for anything up to 2 hours at night, especially if they have any sort of learning difficulties. But then when you go to secondary school and you have sort of 7 and 8 subjects, people are doing 4 and 5 hours work a night. And if you're doing your junior cert or leaving cert exams, you're trying to do your homework and sort of crisis manage what you have to have done for the next day, while trying to do a revision strategy and think about what's going to be on the exam paper in June. And there doesn't seem to be any sense to what's being set. It doesn't seem to be thought out. It's very, very short-sighted.
You have dyslexia, isn't that correct?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Do you think that if you hadn't, you wouldn't have gone down the path in life that you now are on?
Probably not, no, because because of my dyslexia, I do tend to look at things very differently. And I must say, when I was 17, I had to have the psychologist assessments done for the Department of Education, and I met various people from the department who basically told me that me going to college was beyond my status. It was beyond my abilities and what I should be doing. And really, the best way to get me to do things is to tell me that I can't do them.
But so you ended up going to 3rd level. You now have carved out a very successful career for yourself as somebody who does have dyslexia. Did you have to learn things off by heart? Because I'm sure they didn't make exceptions for you.
No, I always worked in a very different way. I didn't realise this. I kind of thought that everybody saw what I saw. I'm a very visual learner, so I would have used a lot of visuals. I also used a tape recorder a lot, both in school and in third level. And I would have used a lot of assistive technology, particularly in third level, which helped me to get a first, where I had the computer read the material to me. So I just learn in a very different way to everybody else, and I learned how to do that very effectively. And one of the key things about the Homework Club is trying to develop a method that incorporates learners into the environment, but allows them to work very effectively. I really wanted to cut down on the amount of time that people were spent learning.
The unfortunate thing, I suppose, Naoisé, about our education system is that for many students in there, they are round pegs in square holes, aren't they?
Yes, I really feel that the system only suits about 25% of the students who go through. There's lots of reasons why it doesn't suit people. It's not just people who have learning difficulties. For instance, people who are kinesthetic are generally people who hate sitting still, and they will be the sort of students who always do exceptionally well in the sports field, but seem to do rubbish in the class environment. And even if you look at the photograph that was included in the article in the paper yesterday, it's a conventional photograph of desks lined up with seats behind them. There's no interaction, there's no sense of movement in the class, there's no talking. Whereas in the Homework Club environment, what we do is we actually promote group learning. We set the tables up into squares, everybody's working together. For auditory people, they need to be able to talk things out. For kinesthetic people, they need to move around the room. For practical people, they need to actually do something with their hands. And for visual people, they need to convert everything into a picture in their head, or they need to watch YouTube clips and so on. And by doing simple things like that, you can create a completely different environment. But even our conventional idea of school, of rows of desks where nobody talks to anybody else or interacts or moves around or does anything, just doesn't work. And that's what we send home for homework for several hours a night as well.
But you're not going to change it, are you?
Well, that's my hope. I've basically, in September, I trademarked the learning method out of the school, which is called the Purple Learning Project, and we've now started to take our experiences back into the school, and I'm in serious talks with Finland at the moment about taking my research to Finland, and they're very interested in the inclusive nature of our work, and they are seen as one of the best leading people in education in Europe at the moment, but yet they feel that they still haven't got this inclusive nature of how you work with people who are a bit different.
Now, I know that you also mentioned in the newspaper article yesterday, Naoisé, that in many cases parents end up doing the homework for the children, because the children will say, look, I'm tired, I'm fed up, I've done as much as I can do, but if I don't have X, Y and Z done for Mrs. O'Toole in the morning, I'm going to be in trouble. So the parents sometimes end up doing the homework.
Yes, this is especially relevant in very young cases. With young students, people are there's so much stress and so much worry at home. People don't want to go into school. They don't want to see their child going into school upset because they haven't been able to do the homework, and so they kind of do it for them just to sort of keep the peace and keep the boxes ticked. So I find that a bit frightening. And also I was talking to one of my own students yesterday, and they said, that, for instance, for maths, that they're sent home with the idea, just try the problems, just try the questions, and we'll go through it if you can't do it. But she kind of said, well, that doesn't really work in essence, because if you turn up the next day and you haven't done it or you don't know how to do it, well, it's not received well.
If you could sit down with Ruairi Quinn, and in fairness to Ruairi Quinn, I think it has been widely acknowledged by all political parties that he is a very progressive education minister. If you could sit down with him and say, for the next 20 minutes, Minister, let's talk about homework, what would you say to him?
I would say that we really have to question the amount of it that's being sent home, the reasons that people are doing it. One of the things that came out of the talk was that parents expected it to be done to sort of assess what was being done in schools. It's not about assessing the teachers. It should be about the students owning their own learning and them assessing how they're doing. And there's very simple ways to do that. So, and the other big thing about homework is this all has to be corrected. So I kind of feel that all we're doing in the system at the moment is homework.
Yeah, I mean, sure, teachers would love the idea of no homework because it is, as you say, extra work for them.
Yes, it's a huge workload for everybody that just doesn't seem to be thought about. And it goes back to this whole idea of there being different ways to learn. It's not just about reading and writing. Those are not the skills that we need for life. And really assessing what we're actually teaching and how we're teaching people to work.
Would you scrap the junior cert and the leaving cert?
I think that at some point there needs to be an exam process, and what I see with our own students is when they work very effectively the way that they need to work, they just automatically go back and do very well in exams. So at some point there needs to be an exam, to assess people, but there needs to be a lot less of them. and there needs to be a lot less pressure. And I do have a little bit of concern about the junior cert coming in the way that the system is at the moment, where there would be continual assessment, because if it just sort of gets put into the box along with the homework and the revision and everything else that's happening at the moment, I can just see it as continual stress for the students from quite a young age. Like 15-year-olds under a huge amount of pressure, and I can just see them feeling like, oh, I have so many exams this week,